lot of guys, their first platoon, you're still learning to like walk and chew gum at the same time as a SEAL. Now you have to do that with a basically a toddler with teeth, with titanium teeth attached to you. So you have to do all the same things you did as a team guy, but now you have to do it with another asset attached to you. And you have to do it at a high level and keep up with the rest of the stack with guys that don't have toddlers attached to them.
Oh, man, tell me about the titanium teeth.
Okay. So titanium. So the myth is that all seal dogs have titanium teeth. It's actually not all of them have titanium teeth. It's kind of like one of those things that happens if a dog damages a tooth, they'll cap it, and sometimes they'll do it preventatively. So it's not every single one, but a lot of times they will get them.
Amazing. So after that first platoon, you identify, hey, you say maybe to your chief or whatever, you kind of explored, maybe you worked with some dogs downrange or something like that. And then what is the pipeline for training once you finish that first platoon and for an operator, what does that look like?
So once you make a decision that you actually want to go to the dog teams, at the time that I was there, you basically would be kind of farmed out to the dog teams. I'm not super certain on right now like how billeting works and who owns what because the dog teams has changed hands of like what group owns it and things like that. But once you make the decision, you kind of go there, and it's a little bit of an apprenticeship
Yeah.
because like you're gonna learn hands on, very hands on, usually very quickly. But and then eventually you get classed up and you go through like a handler course and you get paired up with a dog and you go through this handler course. I think our handler course was like 6 to 8 weeks or something along those lines. We did ours on the East Coast. Uh, and then once you finish that handler course, like you and your dog just went through like a full training workup essentially. And even then, I wouldn't say that most teams are like mission ready at that point. You basically went through dog buds. And so now you have to get back to your dog team and then start really training and then start integrating with platoons and things like that. Start working alongside these platoons and start using all the things that you learned at the course and start being able to continue training, continue working on deficiencies, and then integrate into the training, whether it be like MOUT or doing MAR ops or air ops, like whatever it is that you need to be doing to prep for deployment. You have to go through that with the dog.
And where did dogs come from? Are they trained up to a certain level before you get paired with them and then you take it to the next level through that training? Or are they ready to go and it's more training for the handler? What does that look like?
So really, it really all depends. I can tell you from experience from my class, we had handlers that were paired with everything from dogs that had multiple deployments already to dogs like in my case where that didn't even know how to sit yet. So it can really vary. Stereotypically, the dog is usually going to have some form of training leading up into the handler course because they're trying to at least imprint the dog, have it imprinted on explosive odor. That way, it's not learning the odor; it's just learning how to find it at that point during the course. But it's already been like imprinted. It's already done some foundational bite work, things like that. But it's a wide range and it can vary.
No way. That seems wild to have all the. How many people are in a course like that when you went through?
When I went through, I had about I want to say 6 to 8 guys, and we a combination of guys from the West Coast and East Coast.
And where were the dogs coming from? Were they originally? Did they all come from overseas? Was there like a cadre that goes out there and selects kind of like what you're doing now for aptitude and that sort of a thing, and then brings them back over?
That's exactly it. So they would go and buy trips all over the Netherlands into Germany and things like that. And at the time, they were actually attached to. We were importing using Adelhorst when I was in. Now I not super familiar who they're importing from now, but what we would do is they would handle all the logistics. We would still go with them, and we would kind of handpick the dogs that we wanted. And stereotypically, like, we were kind of picking like the harder dogs that were going to be very, very confident because the things that we ask dogs to do are fundamentally very different than what law enforcement does ask them to do. Similarities, but we need dogs that can be social enough to work in a stack, but also be hard enough to drag a bad guy out from under a bed by their face. So it's like it's a fine line. It's a narrow spectrum of what we're looking for. And the most important thing I actually think we had was with the vendor Adelhorst was we had a deal worked out that basically we could import any dog we wanted. But if the dog didn't work out, we could send it right back to Adelhorst because like they would basically take that dog, and if we failed the dog, it doesn't mean the dog gets sent to a pound. It just means the dog maybe wasn't good enough for the SEAL teams. but it would end up at a sheriff's department. Some of them went to the FBI. They went to different agencies, things like that. We could always get that dog replaced and start again, because our failure rate of dogs was like similar to Bud's. Essentially, it was almost like 30% of the dogs or so were like actually would make it through.
If you enjoyed this video, you'll probably like the Fourth Option podcast. Check it out here.